we have been working through the book of Daniel for a few months, and today particularly thinking a lot about what our culture, a lot about our culture in the sense of, do you feel like sometimes like this is the worst time to live ever, as far as our culture? Do you ever feel that way? Do you feel like I don't know if it could get any worse? Like, God, could it have been any worse? I hear about, deaths and shootings and all the stuff that's online and just like this. Sometimes I feel like, okay, God, this is the worst it's ever been. Like, did anybody ever feel like that ever? And so when I look at what happens in our schools, sometimes I'm in that place. And when I was reading Daniel chapter 3, I really kind of got to this place of sometimes there's peace or comfort in the midst of like other people in misery too. It's weird, I know. And so Daniel chapter 3, it's really bad. And there's idols in the land and things are going really tough. And yet somehow God not only continues to work, but he actually excels in some people's lives. Are you following me at all? And so what I want to talk about in the few moments that I have this morning is how do we stand in a culture filled with idols? Like, how do we keep worshiping God in a culture filled with idols? And so if you haven't been here a while, let me just catch you up to speed where we are. In Daniel chapter 1 is the story of how Nebuchadnezzar is used by God to go into Jerusalem and take captive and really kind of take over part of Jerusalem. And in that process, there's a bunch of elite people taken out of Jerusalem. 4 of those are mentioned in the book of Daniel. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they're taken to Babylon and trained in the ways. And so chapter 1 kind of walks us through that. And we find out in chapter 1 that one of the things they did that's encouraging for you and I in a strategy to stand in our culture is they really lived a disciplined lifestyle. So they chose to give up some certain food as really kind of a way of saying, hey, I'm setting my life aside for the Lord. And that was one of the strategies that they kind of used. In chapter 2, you find that Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego and Daniel, God has been using them so many ways, and they've been so faithful that they get elevated to leadership. And so in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar, it's 3 years since they've been there, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and he's freaked out. Like we talked about this a few weeks ago. He's absolutely freaked out and because of the dream. And so he gets together all of his prophet-type people and all the smart people, right? The astrologers in the land. And here's what he says. Hey, I want you guys to tell me what my dream was and tell me its meaning. And if you don't, you die. And so the story goes that no one knows the dream. Nebuchadnezzar is going to kill everybody. Included in this group is Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so they're saying, hey, we're going to die. What should we do? And so they pray. How many in your tragedy you pray, right? Isn't that kind of what we do? When we're in a place like, I don't know what's going to happen in my life, they pray. And so they pray. And when they pray, God gives them the interpretation and the dream to Daniel. So Daniel comes back to King Nebuchadnezzar and says, listen, here's the dream. And he tells him his whole dream, and I'm going to let you read that dream yourself in Daniel chapter 2. He tells him the dream that happens about this head of gold and the body of silver and bronze and iron. But here's a key part that you have to get as it leads into chapter 3. He says, hey, Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. Your kingdom is the most powerful kingdom ever, but it's not going to last. There will be another kingdom after you. It won't be as powerful, but it's going to come after you. In response to that dream, Nebuchadnezzar kind of has this, oh, God moment. Have you ever had those before, like where God does something supernaturally in your life? And you're just like, oh, God, that's crazy. And so Nebuchadnezzar has this moment, and you think that he's totally going to follow God. Hold on to that for a thought. Chapter 3 comes into play, and here's what happens. We don't know how much time has happened between the dream and now, but we know this. Nebuchadnezzar sets up a large image of gold on the plain of Dura, 90 feet high. We don't know why he does it. I believe it's because he saw the vision before of the head of gold, and he's like, hey man, I'm not just the head, I'm going to rule forever. That's what I believe. But whatever we know what happened, we don't know all that happened, but we know that he set up this 90 feet golden image, and then he did this. He got together all of the most important people in Babylonian culture, had a huge party. And in this party with all the senators and leaders and governors, this is the who's who of the who's who, right? This is like the elite. In that group, in this party, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are there. A guy walks out and says, listen, when the trumpet blows, when the music plays, you guys all need to bow. You know the story? Daniel chapter 3 maybe. The trumpet blows, the music plays, everybody bows except for 3. And what's crazy about the story is you almost get the idea, as we're going to talk about in a moment, that the 3 wouldn't have even been noticed unless the 3's contemporary astrologers didn't call them out. You see where this is going to go. Their contemporaries, their peers, their co-workers call out the 3 guys to Nebuchadnezzar and say, hey, listen, oh great king, everyone bowed except 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And as the story goes on, Nebuchadnezzar gives them one more chance. Either you bow or you burn. And in essence, they say, hey, listen, we're not going to bow. God might save us. He could save us. There's no way we're going to bow. And here's what's really crazy about the story so far, is that everything that just happened is really biblically normal. People die all the time for their faith, even today in our culture, right? It's normal for a person, for a believer, to face confrontation for his or her faith, and in many parts of the world to lose their life because of it. The extraordinary thing that happens is when the 3 boys get thrown into the fire, they not only don't die, but another guy shows up who we believe is the Son of God, Jesus Christ, and spares them completely, man, not touched, man, they don't even smell like smoke, right? You've heard the story maybe. They come out. In response, Nebuchadnezzar seems to have one of those aha moments times 2. You would think again that Nebuchadnezzar is like, whoa. First, God tells me my dream. Now God sets these people free. I'm following the God of Jehovah, like Jehovah God. Wouldn't you think that'd be the case? This doesn't, but that's a whole nother message. Here's what I want to do today. So let me just, if you want to follow that story that I just shared, it's on page number, what page we at? 1067. So 1067 in your Great Bible. That's what we just went through. If you want to kind of catch up with the story, I just gave you a summary of chapter 3, 1067 in the Great Bible. But there's 3 things in the next few moments that I want to share with you that really, I think, are important that we get out of chapter 3. That is living in a world, in a land filled with idols, 3 things or 4 things that really are crucial that we understand. So pull out your notes if you would, and let me just go through those quickly. The first one that we have to get is this in your notes. And this is actually at the bottom. I moved it to the top. An idol isn't always a large statue. Duh, right? But it's more than that. Often, we condition ourselves to think of an idol as something that is out there instead of in here, in my circle. Often we think of an idol as like an object as opposed to a lifestyle that we could very well be partaking in. And just follow through with me. Give me contemporary here. So, contemporarily speaking, It's not weird in King Nebuchadnezzar's day for people to bow down to idols. That's not a weird thing. That's normal. So in their culture, their norm is, yep, we bow down to statues. Would anybody be tempted to bow down here today? Nobody would, right? Probably not. Like today in 2018, if someone said to you, hey, we're all going to bow down to the statue. You want to join us? How many are like, yep? Even if it's the coolest people in the world, your coworkers, if it's your boss, we're kind of like, that's just stupid because it doesn't apply to our culture. But what does apply to our culture are other idols. And here's a few that I want you to write down in notes if you would. One of the idols I just call idols is I called simply the pleasure idol. The pleasure idol is anything in our culture, in your world, in your life that you place in your sphere, in your circle that gives you joy and pleasure and instead of what God should be giving you. Are you with me? That would be a pleasure idol. And they look at different ways. Sometimes a pleasure idol might be, if you're, it could be a four-wheeler. Oh, great four-wheeler, how awesome you are, right? That could be a pleasure idol. And so in other words, if we spend more time four-wheeling than we do Jesusing, we kind of worshiping the ATV idol, right? You following? For some people, it might be fishing. I'm not picking on just, fishing ATV people, but let me keep going. Did someone just call a name out? I thought I heard someone said Brian Ness to you. Did you just say that? Did that happen? You got me all thrown now. So some of the other pleasure idols for us might be things like books that we read, TV that we watch. It might be our Netflix series that we're addicted to. Like, here's the deal. If you look at your life and you say, how much time do I spend focusing on the kingdom of God versus this, whatever it might be, if this is more time, energy, concentration, effort than what you spend on the kingdom of God, you, my friend, have bowed to the pleasure idol. So let's just take it home, especially for youth. And this is more ladies too. If you get up every morning and the first thing you do is look at social media, you may be bowing. If social media, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is, Messenger is the very first thing you think about and the last thing you think about, it may become an idol. Amen? If you're spending more time engaging selfies or whatever it is than you are with Jesus in prayer and worship, right? How many know you may have worshiped at the pleasure idol? It got quiet, my gosh. It's so quiet. And so maybe we don't worship the golden statues, but I think often we can worship things like pleasure idols. It could be a glass of wine, right? I'm just enjoying a glass of wine. Yeah, but this is like, you should be enjoying Jesus, and anyway, you follow that through the whole way through. Let me go to the next one. Second idol, I think, can be one that's contemporary for us. I would call the idol of power and control. There's an idol of power and control that simply says that I will have more meaning, I will have more value, I will have more purpose, if I have more power in a promotion, in a job, right? Like, are you following? So we can sometimes bow at the idol of power, prestige, right? Looking for those things, job security, promotion, whatever it might be, looking for meaning in that instead of going to God and saying, God, I am who I am because of what you made me to be, and I am your child, and I follow you, and my purpose, my value isn't based upon my job title, but it's based upon who you call me. I mean, do we see the difference? I could go more, and for time I won't, except I want to hit the last one more. Because this is probably by far the biggest one I struggle with. And again, misery loves company. The biggest idol that I deal with, honestly, you guys are like, ooh, what's he going to say? My biggest idol, honestly, is me. I I spend more time worrying about me, my life, my feelings, me, mine, my hurts than I spend about what is God saying. Sometimes we'd call it narcissism, where you just think about me, mine, I, instead of saying, God, what's your will? What's your plan? What's your direction? God, you're the author of the story. I'm just a character in your story. How are you leading me? So those are 3 idols that maybe some of you have been guilty of worshiping. How do we stand? Here's what Paul says in regards to this. Paul said this, in this race that we're on in life, that in this race that we run, he says this, that I don't run like someone who's aimless. He's not running here and here to this whim and whatever is cool and fancy and hip. He's not just running around. Paul is saying this, what I do is I set my eye on where I'm going, and then listen to this. I discipline myself, right? So he says, I strike a blow to my body, and I tell myself, you will submit to God. You will submit. I will not put you on the platform of worship. I will not idolize you. I will put you under the rulership of God. That's how Paul deals with this life we call, right, this idol life that we live in, is dying to ourselves every day. In essence, he says this, I resist even to the point of death. Number 2, how do we stand in a culture filled with idols? Number 2, recognize that the miraculous does not guarantee a changed heart. I want to think that after God reads King Nebuchadnezzar's mail, I want to think that, man, I'm going to worship God forever. I just want to think that. I want to think that the second time after God shows up in a fire, dude. Don't you want to just think that he's going to worship like this? Like, what if God showed up in your life that big? Right? And so you want to think that somehow this is going to change his heart. And I just want to share this with you, that living in a culture filled with false idols, the miraculous never guarantees a changed heart. As a matter of fact, in your notes, write this down, would you? It's easy to experience religious conviction without spiritual conversion. Would you write that down? It's important. Write this down. It's easy to experience religious conviction without spiritual conversion. Our world is looking for supernatural. Our world is looking for something outside of themselves. God demonstrates miraculously through you and me because he's a supernatural God that loves people. But that never guarantees a changed heart. In the 33 years that Jesus lived on this earth, like he's the Son of God, he lived among us. Signs, wonders, miracles, people dying that are getting raised from the dead. And what happened? They crucified him, right? So if they crucified Jesus after all those miracles, how much more should we expect some opposition? And here's my point to this. There is another point to it. When we share our faith, when we engage people, we're going to believe the miraculous. We're going to ask God the miraculous. But people don't need the miraculous as much as they simply need Jesus. Does that make sense? So we're preaching Jesus. We're believing the miraculous to be a part of it. Right? When people get saved, the second thing we kind of do with that is sometimes don't we parade Don't we sometimes parade certain people? Like, how many remember Alice Cooper? Anybody Alice Cooper? Aging some of us. Alice Cooper was, Alice Cooper was some would say a great singer, some would say not. I don't know. It was back a few years ago. Alice Cooper was supposed to have gotten saved. Remember this? And I'm like, Alice Cooper got saved. Man! And I'm like, this is great. This is awesome. And so I'm like, everyone's going to get saved. Everybody. If Alice Cooper gets saved, everybody's going to get saved. And I remember watching this, and what I did is I kind of put him on a platform a little bit. Anybody? But then I started to watch him. And I'm thinking, dude, if you got saved, we're in trouble. Because with salvation should be a heart change. Here's the point. It just makes sense. It goes full circle. The miraculous doesn't guarantee a heart change, just like just saying I'm a believer doesn't guarantee a heart change. Are you following? It's very possible for you and me to be going to church every Sunday and say I love Jesus, but totally be avoid from him. Just as it's very possible for people in the world to say I love Jesus and yet be totally away from him. So just chew on that. Let me get number 3. And I stole a stupid quote, but oh well. Haters gonna hate. Haters gonna hate. Long before Taylor Swift sang "Shake It Off," haters gonna hate. Over the last 2 chapters of Daniel, you see one promotion after another promotion after another promotion after another promotion. You see God raising them up. This is important, and God using them. When they're sitting in that field, it was the contemporaries that called them out. Church, in our life, as God begins to bless you, and as God honors you, and as you continue to live out the plan of God for your life, can I just let you know that you're going to face opposition? Can I just share that with you? So expect it. I have found in my life that the more that God blesses people, the more that God puts his hand in people's life, the more it seems that opposition, even from their peers, increases. And the temptation that often happens is this. When opposition comes our way, when we're trusting in God, we're believing in God, and life is changing, you're often going to find a couple things happen. When people oppose you, stuff like, man, you think you're holier than thou? Have you ever heard that before? What are you, a Bible thumper? I believe in God and all, but I'm just not that much of a believer. You ever heard that stuff before? So your response is going to go in a couple ways. Number one, you're either going to respond with a compromise of your faith. I just can't handle it. People think I'm weird. Maybe I'm going too extreme. So you're either going to compromise your faith, compromise your vision, or compromise your direction. Number two, or you're going to get offended. You know what happens after we get offended? When someone hurts us enough, you know what happens? We run away in isolation, don't we? When we get hurt enough, when people say, hey, I can't believe you did this, or we get falsely accused, or we get ridiculed, eventually you're like, people are stupid, I'm just going to be by myself, thank you very much. So either we give up on the vision, we run away from the people that God places in our life, or number three, which is what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did, is we can simply say, God, you know what? I'm going to keep honoring you. I'm going to keep striving to seek you. I'm going to keep doing what you called me to do. And God, I don't care what people think, what people say. God, I don't care what the opinion of men is. But Lord, God, I'm going to honor and seek and serve you despite what everyone else does. Like that's what God is calling us to do and to be. Haters are going to hate. I'm just telling you, the more you grow closer to God, the more God blesses you, the more opposition you're going to find. It's almost like leadership invites opposition. Expect it. If they crucified Jesus, you're probably going to try to get crucified too. And then finally, as the worship team comes in, I want to close with this. Faith is trusting God's story for your life no matter how it ends. Faith is trusting God's story for your life no matter how it ends. When the boys are standing before the furnace, they make the statement that says this: God, oh my God, can take us from the flames. He can deliver us from the flames. And He will deliver us from you no matter what happens. But understand this, King Nebuchadnezzar, that no matter what happens, we will not bow. Faith, authentic faith, is not faith hoping for an absence of trials or an absence of persecution or an absence of pain. Authentic faith is putting our trust in the God in the midst of the fire and the tribulation that we're going through. That's godly faith. Faith isn't a power in itself. Faith simply says, I trust my God that He can, He will, He's able. My faith, my hope, everything is in Him. Here's a situation. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in their faith are delivered. But if you look at Hebrews chapter 11, many have died before in their faith. So faith isn't saying that God will deliver me, heal me, rescue me. Faith is saying this, that I trust it's God's story and I'm putting my hope in Him. That's faith. And that's what I believe that one of the main lessons is out of Daniel chapter 3. He can deliver, He can heal, He can supernaturally provide. He often does. But my faith is not in the act of deliverance or the healing or the supernatural. My faith is in Almighty God whom I worship. That's true, authentic faith. Stand with me if you would.